Good afternoon, everyone, and can I welcome you to the Planning Committee meeting. Can I have apologies for absence, please?
Yeah, Chair, I have apologies from Councillor Johnston, Councillor Lee Douglas and Councillor McCall.
Okay, do we have any further? Oh, Councillor Hackett?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I think Derek and Jim are currently in a meeting about COVID, so they might be a bit delayed.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know if they'll be able to join us either, but we'll put that one on hold, and if they don't arrive by the time the meeting's finished, we can record that as apologies.
Yep, sure.
Okay, right. Order of business, Mike.
It's as printed in the agenda, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That then takes us on to declarations of interest. The usual warning, you can declare an interest just now if you have one, or you can declare an interest when we come to the specific item. Okay, that takes us on to... Yep. Oh, sorry, okay. sorry, Peter.
Being punctilious, Newton Farm at Shaw Fair is on the agenda, and there appears to be a road network which will join Wellington Farm. Wellington Farm was previously explained. I know the owner quite well, and former Conservative candidate. But I'm not at all clear whether that is actually a conflict.
Well, Councillor Smale, it becomes... I was going to come on to that item as we went along. I suppose I can deal with it now. I had a phone call from one of the developers this morning, just asking, or one of the landowners this morning, just asking for if it would be, with the committee's permission, able to delay it to the next meeting on the basis the two parties are still negotiating. And I said I would put it to the committee, but I can't prejudice what happens there because it's in the committee's hands. So I'll just rightly put it to the committee now, and that will get it out one way or the other, and then you will either have to declare an interest or you won't have to declare an interest. So I put that to the committee. Can we continue item 5.2 for one cycle?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. That's much appreciated. Right. Is there anybody else wanting to declare an interest at this juncture, or are we going ahead with the meeting? Right. That then takes us on to item 4.1, which is the minutes of the last committee meeting held on the 13th of October. For those people that was there, are everybody happy? The minutes were circulated, and the administration haven't had anybody contact him with regards to accuracy. So I'm going to put it to you. Is that okay? Minutes agreed? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Brings us on to public reports. The first one is the Roslin Community Conservation Area Character Appraisal, and also the Mavis Bank Conservation Area. I'm going to take these reports as read on the basis that that's the kind of the new way, as the saying goes. And if there's therefore any members that have anything by way of questions that they wish to raise, raise your hand or hit the call. Right. Okay. Councillor Smale, thank you.
Simply to say, as an avid reader of conservation area reports, the quality and the standard of the research here is even higher than before, and I'd like just to pass back the compliment, and I think I'd probably speak for other councillors, to our staff for the high standard that these reports represent.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Councillor Smale. There's a lot of work going into these reports, and as you rightly say, people work terribly hard to make it as accurate as they possibly can. But this will then go, if we can pass it today, it then goes out for the consultation. So are we quite happy to see this one go ahead? Okay, thanks very much indeed. That then takes me on to the 5.2, which we've agreed to continue for one cycle. It then brings us on to item 5.3. Now, again, I'm having a bit of a quandary because the person that actually called it into the committee isn't here. Oh, you've come back. Oh, good. Good. Right. Okay. Right. Let's crack on then. I'm going to take the report as read, and I'll call on Councillor Milligan, seeing you you had referred it to the planning committee, just to come in first and foremost, and then open up to the rest of the committee. Councillor Milligan.
Chair, thanks. The reason I called this in, and I read the report with real detail, and the main reason I'm calling this in is because of the planning issues and the parking issues, sorry, that surround this site. This site is already heavily used. The extension here is going to have a small amount of additional car parking, but I didn't think it's anything like what's already needed. Council has already received numerous complaints, and I get complaints on a weekly, monthly basis regarding parking that's in the road outside, because there's already inadequate parking there. And I think the additional car parking that's suggested in this report is nothing like adequate. It's also fed in off the old Polton road, which again is very unsuitable for any kind of large vehicles. So the Class 6 storage and Class 5 heavy industry would be a concern to me, because I don't think these roads are capable and suitable to be able to take that additional traffic. But the main reason that I've got serious concerns here is the availability of parking in that area, and I think there would need to be a sightmare parking allocated to this unit before I would agree to it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Milligan. Peter Arnsdorf, I'll bring you in right away to answer.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the proposal itself, it's the actual drawings are set out on page 84 and 85 of the papers. It's a relatively small building in terms of its scale, and it provides 4 car parking spaces, which meets the car parking standards the council has, which was set in 2015. So it meets the standards, so hence the recommendation for approval. I would, however, Chair, just acknowledge the point that it's a fair planning issue in terms of consideration of parking provision and access arrangements. Those are material considerations in the assessment of the application. So the committee can make a judgment in that regard. I would just say, like I say, it meets the council's standards, its parking standards, so hence it's recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Is there any other members want to participate? Councillor Alexander, and then Councillor Parry.
Yes, I would just agree with Councillor Milligan that the road down that end is very unsuitable for large vehicles, and there is also already concern about that. I've had news large vehicles going down there about the speed and just about that. It's just already congested. So yes, I would fully agree with Councillor Milligan.
Right, thanks very much for that, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question on a point that Peter just brought up, because I certainly find that my time is more and more taken up with parking complaints. And I noticed that Peter said there that this the council's parking standards hasn't been reviewed since 2015. So I wondered if there was plans to review it and when that would likely be coming back to us.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know the council's transportation services are looking at the parking standards, and it may be a case that they do come back to elected members on those standards in due course. If that's a particular issue, Chair, I will happily speak to my colleagues and ask them to report back to members on those parking standards. But I suppose for the purposes of this application, I'm just operating with the standards that we currently have. The other thing is, Chair, just to acknowledge what Councillor Diane Alexander raised insofar as the road itself, it is predominantly used by residential traffic. I accept that. I think the challenge here is that you've got industrial estate, which has been an industrial estate since I think the 1960s, just because of its history. So we are in a position where it does form part of the council's economic land supply. So we're just responding to that policy position.
That's okay, Peter. And if you just take that out with the application today, but if you take Councillor Parry's point as an action point to our transportation colleagues, it wouldn't do any harm at all, because I do think whether parking goes up the way or indeed down the way as part of our climate change agenda, I do think we've got to have a serious look at that in particular. So if you could take that away to transportation colleagues as an item out with the application that's in front of us, that would be really helpful. Councillor Smale.
Yeah, just some concern that we're, from the point of view of this applicant, we're shifting the goalposts. This is an industrial estate. The parking does meet the current rules. There are heavy vehicles, although looking at the size of this, I don't think that there's a risk of a major change to traffic. But my question to Peter Arnsdorf is, are we entitled, for example, to say that nothing heavier axle loading than 7.5 tons would service this new unit? Or is that beyond the powers of Midlothian Council?
Chair, I think potentially you can if you've got a justification for it. So I suppose the other thing is just to bear in mind is I'm not 100% sure what the scale of vehicles currently using the access road is and how you would actually enforce that. Do you know it's going to that unit? Is it going to one of the already existing units? Yeah. So it can be really quite difficult. I understand the direction of the question, but I think that would be difficult.
Thanks for that, Peter. Councillor Smale, do you want to come back? No.
Just simply, I think given that it is zoned for industrial, we've had several attempts to do other things with this site. It would be unfair to pick off the last applicant, considering the condition of the site in general planning terms.
Right. Thanks very much for that. Councillor Winchester.
Thanks, Chair. Peter, it says one of the complaints says there is a surplus of industrial units in Midlothian. Can you say whether there is or not?
Chair, I wouldn't say there was a surplus of industrial units. We do have large areas of land allocated for economic uses where there are not any units built yet. So we have a sort of economic land supply where we haven't built those structures. But my actual understanding is the opposite, is that we actually have quite a lot of small businesses who are looking for affordable small units and are struggling to find them.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Right. Thanks, Councillor Winchester. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, Chair, following on from what Councillor Smale has just said, if we do refuse this today, do you think that there is a chance the reporter will overturn this and give the permission anyway, and it's another slap in the face? What do you think is going to happen here?
I'll put that to an officer rather than my opinion. Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Hey, I can throw a curveball as well, son.
I think, Chair, in terms of assessing a planning application, I think you've got to reach the decision that you feel is appropriate based on the planning considerations before you. If you decide to refuse it and the applicant goes to appeal, then yes, there's always a chance and always a risk that the reporter, Scottish Government reporter, grants planning permission, but there's no guarantees one way or the other. If you go back to basics, it is an economic site, it's allocated for economic development, and that's the basic premise here. So I wouldn't like to prejudge any reporter, but there's a strong development plan support for the development.
Is that helpful, Councillor Cassidy?
Sort of.
Does that, well, it answers your question. You pay your money and you take your chance.
I think that we're going to start looking a little bit silly if we keep refusing things and they keep getting overturned. And I agree with Councillor Smale. This is we've got permission. Well, we've got the blessing of the planners, and we've got an industrial estate there already, and we cannot punish the last man because we think that it might be we think it might be overcome by parking problems. So when we've not done an assessment since 2015, you know, we're 5 years down the line, there's a lot more vehicles on the road, a lot more haulage.
Thank you for that. Councillor Winchester, did you want to come back, or is that a legacy hand? No, it's a legacy hand, right?
Sorry.
Okay. No, you're all right. No, I just want to keep myself in order. I wouldn't like people to feel they've not had an opportunity to come in, right? I think we've all had our opportunity to have a discussion on this. We're going to have to firm it up. Can we see some action on this one way or the other, please?
Yeah, Russell, I'm quite happy to formally move that that we refuse consent on the parking provision and the overall problems we already have with parking in that area, the unsuitability of the roads leading to the industrial estate, and the likelihood that this development could draw larger vehicles for Class 6 and Class 5 use. I formally move we reject that. The reject application.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Alexander, your hand's up. I'm assuming you're wanting to second that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, is there anything else you want to add?
Just that I agree wholly with what Councillor Milligan has said, and that I have had numerous complaints about that area already with traffic and parking and speeding, etc., and the large vehicles.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Is there anybody wants to move the report? Councillor Smale.
Yeah, obviously I take a different view. We're in danger of making policy on the hoof. I entirely sympathise about having a review across Midlothian of our parking policy for industrial estates, but I think it's unfair to pick off this particular application. Okay,
thank you very much. And Councillor Cassidy?
Yeah, I will second Councillor Smale's proposal. And I feel the same way. I think that we're making policy on the hoof here, and it's not fair on the applicant.
Okay, right. Thanks very much indeed. I don't see any more hands up for participation. So, Mike, if you want to just take the vote.
Okay, Chairman, start with yourself. Russell?
For the report. Or what is that? Was it the motion? Or no?
That's the amendment. Sorry, that's
amendment. Sorry, for the amendment.
Amendment. Okay. Councillor Alexander?
Against.
Sorry, when we're voting, can we be clear? It's either motion or amendment, please. Just to it makes it simpler for me for recording the so
right.
The motion is for the amendments for approval.
For the motion.
Okay, thank you. Here, Councillor Cassidy.
For the amendment.
Councillor Curran.
For the motion.
Councillor Hackett.
For the amendment.
Councillor Hardy. Councillor Hardy.
Is he here? I don't think Councillor Hardy's here.
No, he's on the list.
He is on. He is
well, sorry, his connection is there.
Yeah.
But he's obviously on mute.
Yeah.
Can we just skip that one just now, Mike? And then
that one, come back to Councillor Hardy?
Please.
Okay,
thanks.
Fine. Let me find my list. Councillor Milligan.
For the motion to.
Councillor Muirhead's not joined us. Councillor Munro.
For the amendment, please.
Okay, Councillor Parry.
For the amendment.
Councillor Margot Russell.
For the amendment.
Councillor Smale.
For the amendment.
Let's see, Councillor Wallace with us. Councillor Winchester.
For the motion.
For the motion.
Right.
Okay.
Councillor Hardy, are you out there?
What's the phrase? Is here but not present?
Mike, could you record that as in the meeting but didn't vote or something, and then give us the result?
I'll count that as a no vote, right, Chair?
Right, okay. No, count as an abstention.
Okay. Right. I count the vote as 4 for the motion and 7 for the amendment. So the amendment to grant planning permission as per recommendation in the report is carried.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Thanks for the participation. Item 5.4 is planning permission, or the planning permission yet at Auchendinny. I'll again take it as the report being read, and I'll ask for any members that have any questions. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't think that this application was in any way unexpected, but I have serious concerns about this application related to two issues. First of all, as we're all aware that there's currently a proposal to close Glencore's primary school. And I think that approving to build hundreds of houses at the same time where you're closing some of the local education provision just seems to not make any logical sense to me at all whatsoever. And the second issue is the fact that the public transport serving Auchendinny at the moment. Now, I completely appreciate that sometimes this is a chicken and egg situation whereby you get the houses and there's more demand, and therefore there might be more viability in terms of a bus service. But I think it's really irresponsible for us as planners to be building such a big group of houses with a lack of education provision and a lack of transport. So I will wait and see what happens with this debate and the replies from the developers. But at this moment in time, I feel like this is not an application that I could approve. So happy to hear some feedback from Peter on those issues.
Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the first point, in terms of the education capacity, we are looking and always look to secure some form of education capacity to meet new residential developments, and that would apply here. There is a degree of uncertainty about exactly where the primary school provision will be, because when the site was allocated, it was identified to also have a primary school on the site, and the actual scheme before you includes safeguarding land for the provision of a primary school. So the council can still opt to put a primary school on that site if it wishes to do so, and the applicant themselves would make developer contributions, and there's discussions to be had about transfer of land. Alternatively, if the council wishes to take an alternative decision in terms of where that education provision, in particular primary school education provision, is, again, the developer is prepared to meet their consequences by making their developer contributions. So there is a relationship between education provision and obviously the delivery of housing. There is a little bit of uncertainty about where the primary school provision will be, but there will be primary school provision. It's also worth remembering in this point, which is, again, you know, we have allocated this site for housing, so the house builder coming forward is coming forward on a site which the council has allocated for housing, so they have responded to that allocation. The second point is a fair point about the public transport. The current bus system or bus network, I'm sort of talking out with a COVID-19 scenario here, is that you have the main bus routes along the A701 at the moment. The bus that used to run through Auchendinny, I think that the council actually subsidised a diversion through Auchendinny at one point, and that's no longer running. But you're right, once you get that customer base in terms of delivering here over almost 400 houses, there reaches a point where, rather than walking up to the A701, there may be an argument to ask the bus company to divert a bus back down through Auchendinny. So it is a bit chicken and egg, but it goes back to the basic point that we've allocated it for housing, thinking it was a sustainable location. It's near enough to some bus services, although it's 5 or 10 minutes walk up to the A701. And like I say, the education provision will be met either on this site or elsewhere to accommodate the children. Hope that helps.
Councillor Parry, I'll come in and say my tuppence worth as well, with regard in particular to the education part of it. Nothing to do with Glencore's may close, this school may open. All to do with the only reason that in the local plan in the first place was by way of the insistence of the council asking for a school to be accommodated within this development. Now, I, for one, I'll go on record right now, will not be supporting any move of this proposed new school out with the area, because not only do we let the people that would like to build the houses down, we also let the local community down, because that was one of the arguments that we had in the local community at the time about getting this site into the local plan. So by stealth or otherwise, I will certainly fight the corner for the people, like I'm sure you will, for the people of Auchendinny. On the second point, I get exhausted going on to Midlothian buses about the opportunities they had, and they had the chance of the Dalmoor site just down the road, and we saw nothing there. We always hope that that would happen. Having to walk up Graham's Road to the main Edinburgh Road is something that actually goes right against the grain for a lot of people. If they're young families, they've got buggies. If they're older people, they could perhaps be infirm, and it does take a lot out of them. And I've certainly spoken to people standing at the bus stop on the main Edinburgh Road, and they were saying, "We've just come up there. I wish something could be done about it." So I never identified myself, needless to say. Well, I had football colours on, so it's not appropriate. But we're just talking away, and the message is loud and clear. People have asked for and not got any response from Lothian buses at all. Now, hopefully, if we get our buses back, and that's a big if, this is one of the areas where we can discuss with Lothian buses the need for them to make provision to all these new areas that are getting developed throughout. So, just to reassure you that I'm not taking this lightly either. I do think, though, that we've got to keep our promises and what we said we'd deliver for the community existing of Auchendinny. Thanks. Councillor Winchester.
Thank you, Chair. No need to say it like that.
Well, no, I was just thinking about something else.
Yes, I'd like to echo that about the buses, but with the school, can we put a proviso on there that a school has to be situated there? Because I know the school in Roslin can be extended, and I don't want anybody to turn around and say the school in Roslin will be extended and the children from Auchendinny can go there.
We can do what we like when we're discussing a planning application as a condition. Peter Arnsdorf, you want to come in before I bring you in, Councillor Hackett?
Yeah, Chair, just to be clear, obviously the planning committee sitting as the planning authority. Obviously, it also has a separate function as an education authority, and as part of that education authority, it can make those judgments about its infrastructure in terms of school provision. I think for the purpose of this planning application, it is appropriate to safeguard the site for education facilities, but separate to the plan application process, it would be for the elected members as education authority to make that final decision about its school infrastructure. Chair, if it helps, I know my education colleague Sandra Banks is in attendance, so if you want any additional information about the education components, that may be an avenue for you to explore.
Right, thanks for that, Peter. Sandra, I'll bring you in just now and we'll deal with this particular point that Councillor Winchester, Councillor Parry and myself have raised.
Thank you. I really don't know that I have anything to add. I think Peter has very well explained the position. In relation to the application, an area for a primary school is reserved and safeguarded. The decision as to whether that is where primary school provision should be built for the area has to await a number of things. First of all, we need to have the conclusion to the consultation on the closure of Glencorse. And in those papers, the consultation papers, we outlined a number of other alternatives, one of which is indeed to build the primary school on the site that's been identified. The others, including extension of either or both of Morriswood and Roslin, or indeed using the site for the A701 secondary school and making it an all-through school. So these things are none of these are decided. These are all to be decided, and there will be further consultation with you all, and from an education perspective in relation to what is the correct route, best route to take for primary school provision for this area.
Thanks very much for that, Sandra. It's just a pity that we actually put it in the local plan, but however, we'll leave that one because obviously there's going to be an education report coming to full council at some point in the future. Maybe earlier than later would be helpful. Councillor Hackett.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to question the competence of the planning committee to make that sort of call, you know, and arguably if a private education provider wanted to come in here, would that put us in a bind as well? Not that I would support that as a general principle, but it was just a question, the capacity of the planning committee to make that level of detail on education supply. But I think Sandra and Peter's responses have been very helpful to clarify that. Thank you.
Right, fine. It just left them a back gate, yes, actually. Right, okay. Right, can we determine the application? Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the answers given, but actually I feel more concerned after the answers, to be quite frank, particularly the suggestion that primary school could move out of Auchendirnie altogether and end up as part of the A701 school. So I think this application is entirely back to front. I think we really have to sort out that education provision first before we even deal with this. So while I appreciate that it is in the local development plan, and that the recommendation there is for approval, my constituents I feel would feel very strongly about this and would not want me to support this application. So with that, I move against the recommendations not to approve.
On the grounds?
On the grounds of the education provision, but also the transport plans as well. I don't feel reassured by the answers around the buses, and as you quite correctly pointed out, we did have a site built further down in Auchendirnie, and that didn't result in Lothian buses rushing in with a bus service. And I think looking ahead, it's going to be tough times for bus operators. It's going to be tough times for house builders, and it's just going to be a tough economic time all round. So none of the reassurances have reassured me. And on the grounds of the education provision and the transport provision, I would move against.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Councillor Parry. Peter. Not as a seconder, by the way, Kelly. Peter as an officer.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to try and just not necessarily give a little bit of comfort, but just explain. Obviously, in terms of granting planning permission for a housing scheme, if that were to be the decision, there is a time delay between obviously granting planning permission, including Section 75's construction of houses, selling houses and being occupied, and children. So there is opportunity for the council as an education authority to make those sort of strategic decisions that need to be made and grant permission. The two can run together. That's just to let you know there is that time delay between a planning decision and sort of, there is that pupil product coming out of the scheme. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks. Right, is there a seconder for Councillor Parry? Councillor Cassidy.
I'll second Councillor Parry's motion.
Okay, thanks for
that.
Sorry, Colin.
Sorry, I think that little town's getting a hard time at the moment, and I think the residents need a bit of moral support from us councillors.
Right, thanks very much for that. Is there anybody to move the report? Well, I'll move the report. While I actually have a lot of sympathy for what Councillor Parry's saying, I think we've got, we've been put back in our box, so to speak. Not to say that the alternatives will be supported when that report comes to the council on education, but I would actually urge Peter through your good offices and Sandra through your good offices to get that report on education up to the council as soon as possible. In fact, it'd be lovely to have it up for December. I know that probably won't happen, but that would be a good thing to do. But get it up sooner rather than later, because we can't have communities out there waiting on a will we, won't we judgment on this. And I know you said about the Glencore goes through its due process. Whether it goes through its due process or not, and whatever that outcome happens to be, there was a commitment within the local plan to actually provide a school there. The developers have come up with that, and it's in the plan. And what the planning department have done, have actually put a year on the provision of that site. And the alternatives, I have to say, you better go and have a good old think about, because if you go into Roslyn, they're going to be delighted that we're building extensions for kids from Auchendirry. If you go into Morriswood, gee whiz, I don't know how much bigger that school can get. And if you go into the new school, well, there you are. We're just going to take people from Auchendirry through two main roads to get to the new school, and it just beggars belief. So anyway, I shouldn't be doing that in planning terms, because it isn't planning terms, but it's actually good policy terms that we get it right. But I will, on this occasion, move the report with all the sympathy that I have for the mover and seconder of the motion. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Smale, thank you. Right, is there anybody else? Do you want to say something? No, okay. You're on mute. Councillor Smale, you're on mute.
Thank you for that, Chair. I share very much the sympathies with those who are concerned about the uncertainty of the school allocation in relation to this site. But I think our experience of the Bonnyrigg Section 75 payments is that we are running a big risk that if we turn this down, the reporter will just enforce it, because it's all part of the expansion of Midlothian ordained by the Scottish Government and by the previous council before we were all councillors. We will not get anywhere, particularly if we decide to put our feet in the ground at this point.
Okay, thanks for that. Is there anybody else wants to come in on this particular item? No. Mike?
Chair, you're working me hard today. So the motion.
Oh, we are indeed.
The motion is for refusal and the amendment is for grant. Okay. So, Councillor Imrie.
Amendment.
Councillor Alexander.
Amendment.
Councillor Cassidy.
For the motion.
Councillor Curran.
For the amendment.
No. Councillor Hackett.
For the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Handy left. Councillor Milligan.
For the motion.
Councillor Munro.
For the motion, please.
Motion. Okay. Councillor Parry.
For the motion.
Councillor Russell.
For the amendment.
Amendments. Okay. Councillor Smale.
For the amendment.
Amendment. Last Councillor Winchester.
For the motion.
For the motion. Okay. Is that everybody? I've not missed anybody, no? Okay. So that's 5 votes for the motion and 6 for the amendment. So the amendment is carried, granting planning permission, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that hard work you put in there, Mike. And thanks to everybody, by the way, for participating in that debate. I'm sure it's a discussion that will come up again, hopefully sooner rather than later. Right, there have been no private reports. You'll please note that the date of the next meeting is the 12th of January 2021. And all it leaves me to say is thank you very much for being here today and thanks for your participation. And I now close the meeting. Thank you.